This is Grace Slocum. This is my reflection video for our lighting assignment we just did in Production Fundamentals. So there are 5 different types of lighting we were trying to replicate in this project. You had 3-point lighting, split lighting, beauty lighting, Rembrandt lighting, and artistic lighting. We each had to make some pretty specific choices for each one to make sure we were getting the product that was as close as possible to the example. So for the 3-point lighting, it's not really that hard because we have a blueprint for it already. We have more of an idea of each of the lights has to have a specific intensity. You kind of know where it is that you're going to have to put each of them. It's not really that complicated of an assignment to just do the 3-point lighting. So that one I think is among the most important, and I'll get into that a little bit later. For our split lighting, you've got to keep that light perpendicular to the subject. So if the subject is facing forward, you're going to want that light hitting them at a 90-degree angle from one direction or the other. I don't think a lot of us used a second light for the split lighting just because we got that effect pretty well with just the one light, but I think there were a couple of us that may have used a backlight to give a little bit more of a highlight on the other side of the face that's dark. For beauty lighting and for Rembrandt lighting, we got the same principle and then we just applied it in opposite ways for each of those. So for the beauty lighting, you want it to be kind of soft, not intense, not a lot of shadow on the face. So we moved the lights back a little bit from where the subject was, and we turned down their intensity a bit to give it more of that softer look. Because Rembrandt, you need the triangle on the face, you need it to be more intense. It's supposed to be more emotional. So we were turning up the intensity of those lights and typically moving the light a little bit closer to the subject in order to make sure that we were getting that very intense appearance. So for artistic lighting, I think the one thing that all of us did pretty constant, we had a lot of horror props. Peyton brought a lot of horror props. So there's a lot of this, Freddy Krueger hand glove. I was up first to be the subject because I had a ridiculous outfit on. And the very first artistic shot that we did was me moments away from being murdered by Freddy Krueger, which was cool. My favorite style of lighting that we tried out for this project was probably Rembrandt lighting, because honestly, we would just all get really excited the moment we saw anything even vaguely triangle-like on anybody's face. So just for the level of excitement that it afforded us, I would say that that's probably my favorite. And it also it got hyped up to us as being really hard to do, and maybe we all did it wrong, but we did try really hard to get it done, and it felt like an accomplishment every time we saw anything on anybody's face. It wasn't that bad after we kind of had an idea of how it was supposed to look, where we were supposed to be putting all of our lighting setup stuff. It didn't feel that bad. There's not really a standard blueprint for what it is the artistic one was supposed to look like. The final product and all of the effects of the lights that we were changing were a lot less predictable, and they took a lot more time to make look nice, which is typically why we would do those last as everyone was cycling through using the camera. I think split lighting, of all the types of lighting, I think was probably the easiest to pull off because there was not as many lights to work with necessarily as 3-point lighting. There wasn't all of the adjusting of intensity that you see in beauty lighting, and there wasn't anything specific that we had to absolutely include aside from just the split effect you would see in Rembrandt, where you absolutely have to have the triangle on the face. So I would say split lighting typically felt pretty good. For the hard stuff, figuring out exposure indoors doesn't seem like it'd be that bad, but whenever we were matching the white balance tool in the camera, it would tell us that it was dead on and perfect, but it looks super overexposed or underexposed on the camera. So we were typically going by what it was that we thought looked better, and rather than what the camera was telling us, because we just weren't really sure. I feel that was weird. That was hard to adjust to, and I didn't really like that very much. Managing the background lights so that the background on the camera, you obviously don't want to be showing the shadow of the subject or whatever. We're typically pretty good about that, but just making sure that the background looked reasonable, not too intense. That was more of an eye of the beholder type thing that we kind of had to figure out on the fly. My 3 takeaways around the lighting that we did for this project. I think the 3-point lighting was probably the most important one that we did because everything else for all the other projects that we did, they didn't have the same set blueprint as 3-point lighting. And 3-point lighting had a very specific kind of triangle of how it's supposed to look around the subject and the camera. You've got your backlight, you've got your fill light, and you have your key light. and everything else that we did, every other style that we used, we were either taking that same setup and then just making the adjustments that that style requires, or we were just taking a piece of it and then adjusting to the style again. So yeah, I would argue definitely most important, very helpful to do first every time, which is what we did. My second thing that I learned here, the lighting, like as it's going to appear on the camera, is pretty like sensitive, pretty temperamental. So that's why artistic was a little bit like more difficult, I would say, because like I said, there's like a lot of little effects you're not going to be able to predict necessarily how it's going to look on the camera. I took a couple of shots that are very, very dark. When I did my artistic lighting, I reshot my artistic lighting, and it's very, very dark. It's too dark. Like, those adjustments that we made had a lot bigger impacts than I think I was believing at the time, like now reviewing my footage. So would definitely say temperamental, gotta be careful. Small like movements of the light can make or break what it is the thing looks like, so gotta be careful. The third thing that I would say is that this project, yeah, it was pretty low stakes in terms of like we practiced with a lot more equipment than we actually ended up using. We used like C-stands with sandbags during our practice day with the whole class, but we only used like LED panels and things like that in like our actual projects. And I think that even though we didn't end up having to worry about a lot of that, like even like the basic safety stuff of like which leg do you put the sandbag on or whatever else during our actual project, that doesn't impart to me that I should be paying less attention to it. It's like particularly significant to be paying attention to the safety stuff that's on set, because in our last project and in this project too, kind of the worst thing that you could do is knock something over or break it, which is like more of a financial harm than somebody getting hurt. But clearly the class discussions that we had outlined that people can and do get hurt, so we got to pay attention to that. And I'll definitely keep that in mind going forward, because I don't know what kind of equipment we're going to be using for the next unit or the unit after that. You know, I'll definitely continue to pay attention, so hopefully we can avoid any problems like that. I think that should be pretty simple as long as we all pay attention. When it comes to what else that I want to learn about lighting, I would say I found it really interesting in class when we broke down with examples the sort of things that Hollywood uses to show like a very emotional scene versus, you know, this is how advertisers market beauty products or models or whatever else. The whole idea of like this is a style for a purpose, I thought that that was very cool. And as for anything else that it is that I want to say, I thought that it worked really well with my group. I think they're all very nice and very knowledgeable about what was going on. We were all pretty well focused on what it was we were doing, and I felt pretty comfortable going up to anybody else in the group and asking them like, hey, what do you think of my exposure in this shot? What do you think of the headspace? Do you think that this light needs to be moved? Like, they all were very engaged with what it was that we were doing, and we typically communicated pretty well, like despite the room being loud and the cramped space. But like, I would say we did a pretty decent job of that, at least. We had a really good time while we were doing it. On Thursday, we didn't feel like we were in a time crunch to get things done. We took the time to kind of screw around, but not screwing around in that like we weren't trying to get something out of it. What it was we were doing was, you know, testing which angle Alex should sit at so that his guitar reflects the most light from the, you know, the green fill light that we have in the corner. We were trying to figure out how to make the, you know, the Michael Myers masks or the Freddy Krueger glove look the most, you know, dramatic with the lighting that we had like on hand. So that in particular was cool, because not only was I learning more about the very specific effects that these lights have on, you know, the final product that the camera is going to show, but I'm also learning more about the kids that I'm in class with, which was really cool. And other than that, I think that's about all I got. As always, I would like to thank you very much for watching. I hope that my presentation here is okay. I hope that my project itself looks alright too. Thank you to Chelsea for helping me out with my props and some of my editing too. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I hope that this video was to your liking. I hope that my project was appropriate and was demonstrating not only that I had fun, but that I also tried very hard to meet the expectations that were laid out in the rubric. Thank you very much. Blooper time. Come this way so they can actually see you whipping and nay-naying.
I'm not whipping and nay-naying.
Well, whatever you're doing. Which one is that?
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Oh, are you
Whoop,
up?
Gangnam
Are you Gangnam styling? Not knowing about Gangnam Style is not cool.
Yeah.
I'm not cool. Just so you know, I'm not cool. You've heard it here first. I'm not cool. Let me see. I just inhaled a bunch of your perfume.
Oh, sorry.
So for artistic lighting, I think that Chelsea's gonna drop a bunch of stuff behind me really loud. We were trying to tone down the lights like reasonably so that we'd have as little shadow as possible on like the face and hair and other things of that nature that are on your body, and it's not the same position with the light either. So okay, just to clarify,